So I ordered carryout, and they still gave me a receipt like this. How much are we supposed to tip when you don't eat at the restaurant and you order the food to go?
I am literally checking myself out for my chicken at this machine, and it's asking me if I'd like to tip.
At some point, tipping stopped being generosity and became a system that quietly shifted salaries, pressure, and guilt onto you. Today, you're asked to tip everywhere. Coffee shops, fast food counters, food trucks, ride apps, even self-checkout screens. You don't just pay anymore. You hesitate, you calculate, you look around. A screen turns toward you, percentages appear, people are waiting. And in that moment, a simple purchase stops feeling simple. Because tipping doesn't feel like gratitude anymore. It feels like a social test. And most people don't realize when this changed, who designed it, or who it actually benefits. We've all had that moment. You order a coffee you've bought 100 times before. The price already feels higher than it should. You tap your card, the payment goes through, and then the screen flips around. Suddenly, you're not just a customer, you're a decision. Do you tip 15%, 20%, or hit custom and feel like you just did something wrong? You can feel the pause. The person behind the counter is waiting. The line is forming behind you. And even if nobody says a word, something in your chest tightens. Because this isn't really about the money. It's about the moment, the pressure, the quiet fear of looking cheap, or worse, looking like a bad person. Tipping didn't start like this. It wasn't built into screens, it wasn't suggested in percentages, and it definitely wasn't expected everywhere. Tipping began as something informal, a small, optional gesture, a way to say thank you for exceptional service. In the early 1900s, tipping in the United States was actually controversial. Many Americans saw it as un-American, a European habit associated with class systems and inequality. Newspapers criticized it, labor groups opposed it. Some restaurants even banned it, arguing that a fair wage should replace the need for tips. But over time, the practice slowly shifted. Instead of being something extra, tipping began to replace something essential: wages. By the mid-20th century, certain industries were allowed to pay workers less than minimum wage, as long as tips were expected to make up the difference. This was the turning point, the moment tipping stopped being a bonus and quietly became part of the payroll. What was once optional became structural, not a thank you, but a system. For decades, tipping stayed mostly where it began. Sit-down restaurants, bars, hotels, places where service was personal, where time was spent, where interaction existed. Tipping lived in moments: a long dinner, a familiar waiter, a conversation. It was contextual. And because it was contextual, it was flexible. You could tip nothing, you could tip a little, you could tip more, and no machine recorded it. No interface framed it, no system optimized it. But then something changed. Not loudly, not all at once. Quietly, gradually. Payments went digital. Cash disappeared. Screens arrived. And with them came a new kind of tipping. Not social, structural. The moment tipping entered software, it stopped being a gesture and became a feature that could be placed, timed, measured, and optimized. Touchscreens didn't just replace wallets, they reorganized the entire moment of payment. They slowed it down, isolated it, and turned it into a decision point, a pause, a spotlight, a tiny performance. Before, tipping happened after the experience. Now it happens inside the transaction. You're no longer closing a meal, you're navigating an interface. And that interface matters more than most people realize. because interfaces don't simply show choices, they shape behavior. They suggest norms. They design friction. They quietly answer the question, what am I supposed to do here? When point-of-sale companies and app developers started embedding tipping into payment flows, they weren't just making it easier to tip, they were standardizing it, normalizing it, expanding it. A blank line became 3 glowing buttons, 15%, 20%, 25%, sometimes more. And when a system presents you with options, those options don't feel neutral. They feel like expectations. Defaults don't feel like suggestions. They feel like rules, especially when they're framed in public, especially when someone is standing across from you, especially when people are waiting behind you. Over time, this new design escaped the places where tipping had traditionally lived. It spread outward. Counter service, takeout, coffee shops, food trucks, pop-ups, stadiums, airport kiosks, self-checkout machines. Situations where no one is really serving you. Situations where interaction lasts seconds. Situations where tipping would have once felt strange. But when it appears on a screen, framed as part of the process, it stops feeling strange. It starts feeling standard. And this expansion didn't happen by accident. Platforms discovered something important. When tipping becomes digital, it becomes adjustable. Percentages can be raised, buttons can be reordered, language can be softened or moralized. Support your driver, show appreciation, help your barista. A social act turned into interface copy. And behind that interface, a new financial logic took shape. Businesses could advertise lower prices. Platforms could claim higher earnings for workers. And the difference? Moved somewhere else, off the balance sheet, off the payroll, and on to the customer. What looked like generosity was quietly becoming substitution, not extra, but replacement. A way to fund wages without calling them wages, a way to raise pay without raising costs, a way to increase income without increasing responsibility. And because it was framed as kindness, it didn't feel like what it was, a shift of burden, of expectation, of obligation, from companies to individuals. What presented itself as convenience was actually redistribution, not from the top down, but from the middle out. A system that doesn't demand more from corporations, but quietly trains customers to fill the gap.
The system doesn't work because people are generous. It works because people are human, because we're social, because we avoid discomfort, because we don't like moments that feel awkward, exposed, or judged. And the modern tipping experience is designed to sit directly on top of those instincts. It turns a private decision into a public moment, a screen facing you, a worker standing across from you, a line forming behind you. 3 elements that activate one powerful emotion: social pressure. When humans feel observed, we change, we give more, we hesitate less. We default to what looks acceptable. And that's where design does its quiet work. Those glowing percentages aren't random. They're anchors, psychological reference points that tell your brain what normal is. 15% doesn't feel generous anymore. It feels low. 20 feels standard. 25 feels kind, even though none of those numbers existed in your mind before the screen showed them to you. This is called default bias, our tendency to accept the options we're given, especially when we're rushed, observed, or unsure. And modern tipping moments are built to create exactly that state. You're standing, people are waiting, you want to move on, so your brain looks for the path of least resistance, not what feels true, but what feels safe, what won't slow things down, what won't create friction, what won't make you stand out. There's another layer, too, a deeper one. Tipping doesn't just activate pressure, it activates identity. Nobody wants to see themselves as cheap or uncaring or selfish.
So the moment becomes moral, not economic. You're no longer choosing a number, you're choosing what kind of person you appear to be. And that's a powerful lever. Because once a decision is framed as character, not cost, it stops being calculated. It becomes emotional. This is known as moral pressure, when systems quietly link spending to virtue. They don't need to force you, they just need to suggest what a good person would do. And when you comply, something else happens: relief. The tension dissolves, the moment passes, and your brain rewards you for escaping discomfort, not for making a rational decision. Over time, this trains behavior. It teaches us to associate paying more with feeling better, not because the act is fair, but because the moment is over. And that conditioning is incredibly effective because it doesn't feel like pressure, it feels like choice.
This video isn't about hating tipping, and it's not about blaming workers or shaming customers. It's about noticing the system we were slowly placed inside. Because tipping didn't become uncomfortable by accident. It became uncomfortable because it was asked to carry something it was never meant to carry: wages, stability, corporate responsibility. A screen can ask you for money, but it can't tell you why it's needed. It can't show you where the burden actually came from. It only shows you where it landed, on you. So maybe the real shift isn't about tipping more or tipping less. Maybe it's about seeing the moment differently. Not as a moral test, not as a measure of character, but as evidence of a structure. A structure that quietly moved part of its responsibility into your daily life. Awareness doesn't fix the system, but it changes your relationship with it. It turns discomfort into information and confusion into clarity. Because once you can see the design, you stop personalizing the pressure. You stop arguing with the surface, and you start recognizing the shape underneath. And that's the point of videos like this, not to tell you what to do, but to show you how things work. So the next time a screen turns around, you won't just see numbers, you'll see the system that put them there.
The next time a screen turns around, you won't just see numbers, you'll see the system that put them there. Do you think tipping still makes sense, or has it turned into something else?